And before I hand us over to our guest speaker, Julia Westfall, today, I'm going to remind everyone just kind of the process here. So what we'll do is Julia will speak. She'll share all of her vast wisdom and knowledge. And if you have any questions at any point, you can drop them in the chat or the Q&A section, and then we will answer them all at the end. And so what I'll do, since we're doing a guest speaker this week, once she finishes up, I will read out the questions and then Julia can answer. And so that'll be a great way so we can all hear the question and then know what she's talking about. So that'll be super quick and easy. And then once we finish up, you guys will get a recording of the session in an email. And so you can go back through and look at anything. If there's something you missed or something you want to look at again, you'll have that. So super simple, super easy. But like I said, our guest speaker is Julia Westfall, and she is my mother, which is super fun. She owns and runs HERA Hub DC in Tenleytown, and she's just a whiz at business. She's been in the business world for decades at this point and has started and run and helped and done a lot of different things for a lot of small businesses. So she knows small business, and she knows small business in DC. So the big thing that she's going to talk about today, though, is pricing your services. I know that I really struggled with this when I was starting up, and she was my go-to person to ask. I still ask her today. We were even having a conversation earlier just about some pricing things. And so I'm excited for you guys to hear from her. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute myself and turn off my video and turn it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Hannah. I appreciate you having me on. It's so exciting to see this whole digital mini course thing evolve since the beginning. I have to say, I'm a proud mom, and you're doing such great work and all. But I'm really excited today to talk about one of the topics that is a quintessential topic that I have with so many people. Whether they are launching a business, have been in business 5 years, been in business 10 years, it really doesn't matter. The question about how do I price my services, how do I know that I'm getting the best price for the value that I bring to my customer? Or even when you're just getting started, it's, I don't even know where to begin, to know what pricing structure I should use. So I'm going to share just some simple tips. There's no special algorithm, there's no scientific formula or secret I'm going to share that will solve all your pricing issues, because you're going to be continually, and you should, as a part of your planning process for your business, and you're evaluating the strength of your business, you should actually be reevaluating your pricing model every year, or whenever you add new products, or whenever your target market changes, especially now that we're in this pandemic. Some people are really struggling and need to change up their pricing to make adjustments for new target market or new services that they're offering. Some people are really slammed because what they were doing before, now they're experiencing some really growth because they're really diving in and helping people solve the problems that they're having in their business. So, but it's just a matter of good business practice. You should always be thinking about your pricing and reevaluating it to make sure that it fits with your target market, the services you're offering, who are your competitors out there, and the value that you uniquely bring to your customers as you help them solve their problems. So the 3 tips, because it's a short period of time, that I'm going to talk about in more detail are, the first one is research, research, research. You always need to be checking what your competitors are doing, checking what's available in the market. I'm going to go share some more tips on that. So we'll talk about how to research. Also, it's really critical that you know your costs, your hard costs, your client, your cost of sales, all of those things. You really need to make sure that you're tight on those so that you know how much money you need to bring in to cover those costs, plus make some money, have some income. And then at some point in time, you have to put a stake in the ground and just go for it. Because what I've been doing a lot of listening to different videos and things like that recently in preparation for the mini sessions I've been doing. And, you know, I always hear that that pricing is really, again, it's always changing, always evolving, and you need to really stay on top of it all the time. So there are lots of recommendations out there. So even if once you've kind of listened to my session, even if you go to YouTube or whatever and you want to get some great ideas about how to price yourself as a service-based company, there's a lot of resources out there, and they all really share some good tips. But these are usually all the things that are in there in some form or fashion. So as far as research goes, I hear that all the time. Well, especially for service-based companies, you can't just like go to Amazon and say, how much does a communications audit cost, you know, from my competitor? You know, a lot of times people aren't putting prices on their website and things like that. So it does take some digging and some thoughtfulness to figure out what's out there in the market. What are people currently paying for a comparable service to mine? So again, checking out your competitors' websites, you can always start there to see what kind of information that they have, and check different tier levels, you know, with fairly new businesses or some more experienced people who are really at top of the market. Because, I mean, it's an analogy to when I was kind of had a collectible, antique collectibles business years ago. And a great piece of advice that I got was, you know, even if you're in the collectibles business, you really need to look at fine antiques as well. Because if you're not knowing what's more collectible versus what's a really vintage and fine piece, then you don't really have a comparison to understand the value. So I think that analogy applies here. You have to look at people who are just getting started and people who are really hot in the market, and see where you fit along that spectrum, because that will give you some ranges. You know, follow people on social media that you would like to be like in your business, that are really, you know, innovators, creative thinkers, that offer really great products, seem to have a lot of energy, and that sort of thing. So follow them and see what they're doing. Also, there are a lot, and especially now, a lot more online groups specifically for different sectors. I mean, I know DC has a great freelancers organization that, you know, people can use for referrals and also getting connected with people. And a lot of times you'll meet someone and have a conversation with them, and it might be that you can collaborate and share knowledge and share information and learn from them about what is the going rate for this. For website design on an hourly basis or whatever it is. So, but you have to do some digging. And it's important to kind of think about who is in your network that you can reach out to, that might be in a complementary industry, or might be in the same industry you're in, but maybe they're in another location, so you don't really feel competitive with them. And you should have some conversations about what price ranges do they see and that sort of thing, because you really need to do your research. Also, you can ask colleagues in your industry, and then a lot of times professional associations that you join might have some information that they provide their members as a resource about best practices and all different kinds of things. So, you know, really, really dig and see what you can find out and uncover. And like I say, you always need to be doing this type of stuff on a regular basis, because you really need to be reevaluating your pricing. And then the other thing too, when you're just getting started, let's say you left a full-time job and you want to go out and kind of provide that same service, but as a freelancer or to multiple clients, you know, really think about what is the annualized salary that job would get in the market, and then drill it down into an hourly number. But that's not going to be your hourly rate. That's just going to give you a little bit of perspective, because you really need to be charging more than that, significantly more than that, because you're really, with a full-time job, there's always the assurance that you're going to have a regular pay, and you've got benefits involved in all of that. So with freelancing and obviously working as a consulting-based business, there is no guarantee. And so that's why people anticipate that they're going to pay more per hour for a consultant than they would for an employee. But until you know what that employee cost is to them with benefits and vacation pay and taxes and stuff, it's hard to kind of gauge where your rate is going to be against them going with a full-time employee. So that's just another thought. And then the third thing you really need to think about as you're doing this research is, where do you fit in that spectrum of experts in your field or companies that are offering your services? Are you just getting started and have some experience, but no, it's early on? Or are you an expert in that professional expertise and now you're just starting a new business, but you have 20 years working in the field as an expert? So you really bring more to the role by virtue of your experience and your education and all of that stuff than you would if when you were just getting started. So those are some things that you need to think about and research and really kind of understand where you fit within the spectrum. The next thing is to really know your costs. And one of the things that people a lot of times do not do, especially if they feel like they're billing on a project basis, is they don't really track their time. So they may say, oh, it's $2,500 for a communications audit, for example. But unless you're actually tracking your time and know how much time you're spending, then you don't know whether or not you're billing, you're exceeding the cost of your estimate for the job, or whether not you're making a lot of money. So you have to really track your time and know where it's all going. And also you need to be tracking your expenses. And if you're just launching and you're not incurring a lot of expenses, just think about, make some projections. What professional organizations do you need to belong to? What types of training do you need to get to enhance your skill set? What regular recurring expenses do you have? And maybe you're even delivering a service to your client that has some, maybe not so much now as before, but let's say before you were doing an in-person workshop and you might have, things that you're creating and that you're leave behinds and things like that, that you need to make sure that you're including those kinds of costs in your estimates for, how much you need to be charging for a particular workshop. So just to make sure you're covering your costs. And then the other thing that I think is challenging, I should have moved on to this slide, but anyway, so these are my thoughts. These are the things with respect to tracking your time. And I've talked about this stuff, but really it's important to track your time so that you know what services are costing you money and what services are making you money. And you're not really going to know that until you have that. You go back and look at how you spent your time and how you billed for it and analyze it to find out what that number is. And I've also got a link here for some good time tracking apps that HubSpot published for 2020. And then here again are just the things I talked about already. Cost of sales, what are the costs are included in your client product? What are your regular recurring costs, monthly costs and things that you have to have? Think about those and budget for those. And then what are your income needs? How much money do you need to make? Because it's really hard to figure out what your prices need to be if it's not going to generate enough income for you. So it's always this kind of balance. I had a person I was talking to one time, and she went through and did this exercise of taking all of her I'm going to do these many workshops and work with these many private clients and all that stuff. And she added it all up, and it was like, $30,000 a year she estimated. And, of course, really that wasn't clearly enough money, But so she either overestimated the amount of time it would take to deliver each of those things, or she undervalued the cost of her time. So I think that that's very typical. And I think most people err on the side of charging too little instead of charging too much. So think about that. And then the next thing you need to do is validate your business model, which is what I was talking about with her. You've got to set up a spreadsheet. And it's great if you've been in business for a while and you have some actual financial history, but really think about all your different revenue streams. And if it's easier to think about it on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis or on an annual basis, depending upon the types of services you deliver, do some math and figure out, if I'm charging this much money to deliver this thing, and I can do that this many times a year, then am I going to make the kind of money I need to make? So, and that will help you really figure out, well, maybe that I need to look at these different price points and how can I add value to what I'm doing so that I can charge more, or make sure I'm selling or marketing my product in a way that the value is really clear to your clients so that they can get an understanding of the value of your services compared to the price that you're charging. And that, I think, is really important, because most of the time when I talk to people, they are significantly undervaluing the cost of the service that they're providing. So this will help you kind of go through just this exercise, and actually Hannah's done a really great job with hers, and it can be a little tedious sometimes, but it really is really helpful. And then you can go in and take that spreadsheet and make changes to see which revenue streams and things like that are really driving more revenue, and then you can make some adjustments to how you're spending your time, which is really important, because as a consulting-based company, your time is your inventory. That's what you have to sell. So, and anyway, and then the third thing, real quickly, is just put a stake in the ground. At some point in time, you've got to decide, I've gotten all of my data together, I've researched, and I've gotten some feedback from people that I trust, and I'm just going to go for it with this, because the only way you ever truly know about if you put pricing your value and with the amount of money you're charging is if somebody pays you for it. You can do projection after projection, you can budget after budget, but if you put it out there at a certain price point and everybody and their brother is snatching up your services, wanting to do business with you, then you're probably priced too low. If you put the price out there and it's way high, or perceived to be way high based upon the value that people perceive that they're going to get from you for that, then that also tells you something. So it really is always a fine line that you have to figure out, but you can't do it until you put the line in the sand, or the stake in the ground, or whatever you want to call it. That's how you'll know how people perceive your true value, is somebody's going to pay you for it. So, and the other thing that I hear through all of these videos that I've listened to about pricing, is that no price is forever. You can always change your price. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that agonize and agonize and agonize over their pricing for months. And then it's like, how are you ever going to, is anybody ever going to buy your product unless they know what price you're going to charge? So you just start somewhere, and then you can always change it. You can always change it. So, just give yourself a break on that, and realize that you're not making a forever decision on what prices you're going to charge. So those are my 3 tips. Research, research, research. Know your costs and what your expenses and how much money you want to make, and then go for it. Take your knowledge and analysis and just put a stake in the ground and learn from it. Because the other thing too is, you are going to do this over and over again, and you should, as I mentioned earlier, as best practice, reevaluate your pricing model on a regular basis. You're going to have some products that make you more money than others. You're going to have some that are loss leaders, but you still like to do them because it gets your foot in the door with a new client. A lot of different information you can gather by really, doing, setting a time for yourself every year. You don't want to be constantly doing it, but you need to set a time where you're going to rework your pricing model or just revalidate it. Here are some additional resources that we have if you're just launching your business. I have a free mini course that you can sign up for. It's a series of emails that kind of talks about pricing and business modeling and customer discovery and the whole gamut there. And then I also have my launch program that I started last year. I'm taking it virtual now, and these are the topics that we talk about. Again, customer discovery all the way through budgets, projection, and financial planning. And now they're on Zoom, and I've actually added a half-hour one-on-one call between the two Monday sessions to kind of follow up and get some questions answered that might be individual for your specific situation. We're starting Mondays on September 26th from 4 to 6, and there's more information. If you want to learn more and talk to me personally about it, you can certainly go to that link and just fill out a little form, and I'll reach out and we can just see whether or not it's appropriate for you. And then I'm also doing some mini sessions. She has such a great idea. The next one is going to be the final in the series of 6, called Managing Your Financial Projections, Doing Your Budget and Reporting. So that's it. Oh, and here's my contact information as well. So I don't know if we have any questions that are coming in, but
yes, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in. That was a great presentation, Julia. That was really helpful. I know I get the added bonus and perk of being your daughter and being able to have these conversations with you constantly. It feels like in the best way possible. And so, yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. It took me a long time to figure out, even just like, and maybe you can kind of speak on this too. I know we've talked about it, but I'm sure everyone here would love to know more is, when you set your price, how do you really kind of overcome that anxiety or that feeling of like, gosh, is this too much? I know you kind of touched on that, but like, what are some ways that you help yourself and your members to really feel confident in their pricing and not budge? So like if they're, getting some pushback against someone, are there like things that you found that are really helpful to say or to do to really make sure that you're not either undercharging or kind of getting taken advantage of, because it's just scary sometimes to stick to your pricing?
It is. I just had a phone conversation with someone who has, hasn't raised her rates in 8 years because she's working with a lot of the same people. They're moving all around to different companies. They're bringing her along. She's helping them get promoted because she's providing great services. And I said, it's just a simple phrase. You really have to set up your value statement, the value that you're going to bring, and then just make it simple. My rate is, and just put it in the proposal, put it out there. And if somebody wants to negotiate, then they're gonna and people will. They're gonna maybe toss in some objections and things like that. Listen to what they have to say, and then, but I do think that you can decide to negotiate if you want to, but really the confidence that you're saying comes from knowing the value that you're bringing to that client, and it is worth that rate because you're going to help them solve their problem. And you're going to help them achieve their sales goals potentially for a new product, or help them address the social media thing, or anything. But when you're solving a big enough problem for someone, if you focus on how you're able to help them do that, then they're going to see the value.
Yeah.
So, and then the other
Great.
thing is a great transitional phrase from Felina that I always love to share is, and it works sometimes, because a lot of times people will, in the service business, people will say, hey, can we just meet for coffee? I want to get a cat. I want to run a few ideas by you. So, and a lot of times we do that because it's a great way to make a connection, build a relationship, and all of that stuff. But we all know the creep that comes in, where that question isn't anymore about building relationship. It's more about, well, why don't you answer my question about the problem I'm having and help me solve my problem right now for zero money?
Yeah.
And I know we all experience it. And sometimes you can decide that it's worth it to give away what you might normally have your clients pay for, because there's a value associated with a potential new client or something. But a great transitional way to make it easy for people and not to feel embarrassed is, let me tell you how I work.
Yeah.
So when somebody gets to that point where they're creeping into, this is what people pay me to do, you can just say, hey, well, let me tell you how I work. I have a half-hour consultation, free consultation, or I do it 1 hour up front, or if you strategy session that's going to cost you $250. If you decide to go with me, I apply it to the package, anything like that. But just the simple phrase of, let me tell you how I work, sometimes will help with the awkwardness of saying, well, I really kind of charge my customers for that.
Right.
So you're kind of creeping into the billable area. So I just always recommend that, let me tell you how I work phrase to help get over that.
I love that. That's great. All right, we have one other question. So from Ashley, she's asking, what about for clients when you work with them on a longer term basis and you want to reevaluate your rate? So for example, like maybe on a yearly basis, do you have any recommendations on how you can adjust that rate, or if you should just stick with the original price, or you can update it? So basically, if you're having that longer term client, is there a way that you can adjust that? And how can you go about that?
Okay, what I would say is that when you're first negotiating, and obviously you're past that point, when you're first negotiating, it's great to right up front, out of the gate, say, this contract is going to be for this period of time, and at this particular stage, we're going to reevaluate, and you will be making annual. Some of my clients in the past have said, I make annual changes to my pricing. Let them know up front. You don't want to try to, kind of get in the groove and then tell them later that you're gonna, if you set it up front that way, that is much better. But if you're already in a contract and you want to raise your rate, then I think it's very simple. You're more valuable to them now than you were when you started. Because you know their organization, you're highly more effective, all of these different reasons why you're really valuable to them. And so I think that by focusing on the value, but again, it's a simple thing. When you're a contractor, it's your business. And you can say, my new rate for 2021 is going to be this.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's pretty risky. 10% of increase is a fairly standard sort of increase if you're working as a consulting service-based person on an hourly basis. And sometimes just by being straightforward about it and not feeling like you have to get into a big explanation and justification is my rate is now this.
Yeah.
And I do think that businesses are accustomed to paying more and having people increase their prices all the time. It happens. Business people expect that. But I think that it's harder for us to think, well, wow, how am I going to approach them if they've already been paying me at this rate? Right. So 2 things is, if you can set it up front, that it's going to be an annual reevaluation of the contract, and the rate structure, and you can just say the rate structure. So it's not like it's my rate, say my pricing structure, my rate structure. You know, and, you know, you can even set it up with a regular thing that you send out a notice in October that come January that there's going to be a new pricing structure. Things like that, but it's really important that they understand the value that you bring. And chances are, if they're keeping you on year to year, you are definitely bringing some value, because they wouldn't keep sending you more work if they don't think you're worth it. It's just like employees aren't going to work forever for no pay increase. Employers expect to pay them more for more experience.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm a minute over. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Yeah, so we're at 5:01. I know if people need to leave, feel free to jump out. But if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me or to Julia directly. I obviously have a slight bias, but in my 26 years of life and experience, everything I've learned from her has greatly impacted my business. So if you have questions about HERA Hub or about how you're running your business, and if there's things that you can do, I mean, literally my entire success of my business is because this woman has invested her life and her time into the lives of others. So
your business is the hard work you do. Okay. And that's the first thing we need as women business owners is our business is successful because we work hard.
That's true. I work very hard, and because of the support that I get from Julia, I have found success between the two of those things. So yeah, I really encourage you guys reach out if you guys have any questions. I will be sending this recording out, and if you need anything, please let us know. I'm so glad you guys joined us today, and next week we will be talking with Katie Stanton, who is the founder and CEO of The Good Lemon, and she will be talking about how to DIY your social monitoring. So that'll be really interesting and exciting. I'm super pumped for her to come and speak, and she's been super fun. So thank you guys for joining us, and I will be back here next week.
Thanks.
Bye.